All right. What is up, camp believers and high performers? Welcome to another episode of our Fridays Hero Journey series. I'm so happy to be able to have this person in. Obviously, having listened to this episode, you already got an intro for Liz. But one of the things, Liz, that I'm just really proud of us for doing right now is overcoming parenthood type of things and getting together. So, congratulations to both of us, right?
High five right there. Yes, yes. The struggles making it happen. I am very much so appreciative of parents who get it and need to
Yeah.
reschedule last minute, things like that. So thank you.
Gosh, I feel like parenting in itself, and like I'm developing a talk currently, and one of the jokes that I had made with just like the intro was like, how come no one gave us like a parenting book when we turned like 13? That was like, hey, I just want you to read up the next however 4, 5, 6, 10 years so that you're prepared for this. Like, did you get the book? Because I didn't.
I feel like my mom mentioned something to me, like for instance, don't mix alcohols, things like that, but she kind of missed the whole thing on how to raise tiny humans.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that should be a book in itself, and it should just be given to young teenagers to prep them, and in some ways maybe scare them into having kids later. I don't know, but I didn't get those chapters on like, hey, you're gonna have to do the best that you can and be okay with it. But Liz, you and I are here right now, so it's such a huge win. I'm so excited to have you on the pod. So welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here on the pod.
Yes. Okay, so Liz, I there's a lot of things, and you and I were talking off air, and when I, sent this invitation for you to come on the Can't Believe Pod, I talked about how I really love your hero's journey and how vulnerable you've been with your story, not only just coming from young adulthood to stepping into parenthood, and really a lot of the triumph and tribulations that you've had to go through there. So in so many ways, I'm just so excited to hear this part of your journey. So I think maybe a good place to start is introducing yourself and where you're from, and maybe tapping into a little bit of your childhood and what happened during that time that created this wonderful person who's in front of us today.
Well, thank you. I feel like everyone needs like a glam squad, and I am so grateful to be
Yeah,
in network with you. And as you just make someone feel really good. So thank you.
absolutely.
I'm gonna do this in a nutshell because I could talk for hours, and I know not everyone has time and doesn't want to hear me talk for hours. So
Mhm.
I actually was just sharing the story randomly at the bank. So I am an open book. If anyone has questions after, feel free to reach out to me. But long and the short, I became interested in nutrition when I was 13 years old. So when I was 13 years old, I actually struggled with an eating disorder. And at that time, it was, going through puberty, going through all these changes. And I just felt like the only thing I could control was what I was putting in my body, which, as we know, control can have
Yeah.
a positive and negative with it. Well, at 13, it was not so
Yeah.
great to have that
Yeah.
kind of control. So at that time, I was actually
Yeah.
diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, and I sought an entire treatment team that included an RD and a therapist. And so at that
Mhm.
time, I realized how important nutrition was, and not only fueling our bodies, but also just the entire multidisciplinary approach to helping young people understand food, understand how food works in our bodies. So flash
Yeah.
forward a decade. I ended up graduating by 23 with my master's in nutrition, became an RD because I knew at that pivotal point in my life that nutrition was my calling, that I was meant to be
Mhm.
an RD. And
Yeah.
so 23, I finished my master's, my degree, I become an RD, and I realized like, hey, I love this field. I love what I'm doing. I'm working with adolescents, doing a lot of different things. I was working clinical. I think as most people know in entrepreneur and beginning a new career, you do a lot of different things just to
Yeah.
get your feet wet, get established, those kind of things. So I was a director of a senior living facility. I was a wound care manager, like just doing a lot of different
Just all
things.
the things.
All the things. But I
Yeah.
will say this, at that time, I was also a nutrition contractor. So all these jobs I was actually subcontracted in. So I
Yeah.
technically had my own business right off the gate. So that
Yeah.
was like a really important kind of benchmark for me, I think, to where I am, a decade plus later, because I
Yeah.
realized a lot of the kind of the functioning parts of a business, even
Mhm.
though I had like a four wall building I was going to.
Yeah.
I had coworkers, things like that. I was actually still contracted that whole time. So that's like professional Liz right there.
Yeah.
started early in my career as far as understanding entrepreneurship a little bit and what I needed to do. I took a break from it. I started working for UCSD. I did food service there for a while, which actually helped me connect with a lot of food brands, understanding a little bit more of the marketing side, especially working at high school students going into college, things like that. And it really
Yeah.
actually got my feet wet in communications. I had a YouTube channel when I worked for UCSD. Um, all different kinds of things that I was doing. I was running social media for them. It was just really fun, and all the while I had my own website. I was doing little recipes here and there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until like that really getting my feet wet in media that it really spoke to me, and I realized I want to do this full time for myself. Like as much as
Yeah.
I love working for the university, I want to set my own schedule. Personal life during this time, my husband and I were, knee deep in fertility treatment. So
Yeah.
it was a very challenging time. I was constantly having to leave work to go to appointments. And if anyone out there has been on an IVF or, assisted reproductive technology journey, you know that
Yeah.
you spend most of your time in and out of appointments, getting blood
Hmm.
drawn, looking like you're coming out of some kind of other appointment.
Yeah.
People used to joke at my arms, just, how much is affected. So I realized that
Yeah.
I couldn't be who I needed to be at that job at that time. And so
Yeah.
what better than to take my feet and just run with them and see where my own business can go. And so it was actually when we were in the very introductory stages of family planning, going through IVF, that I decided to take my business full time back in
Yeah.
2016. And so here I am today, almost, end quarter almost of 2021. And I can
Yeah.
say I love what I do. I love the balance that I have. And now, because I took that time for myself, I took that time to build my own business structure, build my own, you know, um, schedule per se. I worked hard, don't get me wrong. I think everyone out there knows how
Yeah.
hard you work as an entrepreneur as if you were in an office building job, but I was also able to bring my two rainbow babies into our life. So I have
Yeah.
a 3-year-old, I have a 5-month-old, and I'm able to be mom. I wear the mom hat
Yes.
like 95% of the day. I wear my business hat, when I'm working nights or weekends and things like that, just because I think you probably know this too, like, it feels another part of our cup. Like
Yeah.
it speaks to our soul. Like I want to help other people. I want to communicate nutrition messages, but I also really want to be involved as a mom. So
Yeah.
um I threw a lot out there really quickly, but I just want to kind of paint this picture that, you to get where, you might see these influencers and things online, like it's not like this pretty yellow brick road. It's
It's
oftentimes
not.
filled with challenges, filled with, overcoming the realities of what life will throw at us,
Yeah.
and just being true to yourself and following, I think one thing that I learned early on was that, you can hit all these marks of what you want to do in your career and make all this money that you want to make. But at the end of the day, if you're not truly happy with what you're doing and the role that you have, what your purpose is in life, then no
Yeah.
money in the world is going to solve that. You have
Yeah.
to really find that passion that speaks to you inside.
Yeah. And it's so influential too. And so for our listeners out there who are still trying to cultivate your own version of your hero's journey, I think it's really relative and it's really courageous to talk through some of the moments that were really life-changing. And in a lot of ways for a lot of people, and this is definitely my story too, like some of that pain and some of that triumph has to happen so that you can become this person that you need to become, right? So for our listeners out there who are day ones, you know that in my career I started with eating disorders. And so one of the like biggest tools that I found working with people, Liz, was oftentimes that the behavior that they were doing, like it was a communication tool. They maybe didn't at the time like have the resources or the the wherewithal to talk about like, hey, this is actually what I'm trying to communicate. So Liz, you mentioned like 13 years old, seeking recovery from an eating disorder. If we kind of dial it back a little bit, going back to your 13-year-old self, do you have any insight on what you were trying to accomplish or maybe communicate during that time?
Totally, actually, I was a 7th grader, and I was getting ready to start my 8th grade year. I always went to a private small school, same 32 kids I started
Yeah.
kindergarten with. We're getting ready to finish our 8th grade year, enter and finish, all these big fun promotion
Yeah.
activities. And the 2 months before we entered our eighth grade year, I was asked to leave a school. I didn't do anything crazy. It
Yeah,
wasn't
I
I
was
wasn't
like,
some rebel child.
no. Yeah.
It wasn't anything like that. Truthfully, it was something that my parents got involved with as far as, we had 4 or 5 teachers my 7th grade year, and they said, look, we're spending all this money on private education. We can't do this. Like, where is a teacher that's going to stick? Like, and so,
Yeah.
the principal didn't like so much that my dad was so strong worded and said, if you don't like it, your kids are not allowed back here in the fall. And so it was
Dang.
one of those things that was like totally out of my control. I wish I could say, yeah,
Yeah.
I got caught drinking in the bathroom. Like, nope, that
Yeah.
was not
I was
me. That
smoking.
was
Like,
me.
I'm a
No,
badass. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I wouldn't even hold my boyfriend's hand. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
one of those things. Like, and so it's totally out of my control. So at this
Yeah.
time, like, what could I control when I'm getting shipped off to a new school with new 32 kids who've been together 8 years now, and I'm the outsider coming into this new territory?
Yeah.
So I made friends really well. It was actually pretty ironic. I didn't actually develop my eating disorder until the end of my 8th grade year. So I made
Really?
friends
Okay.
very quickly. I was on sports teams. I just got really involved and like had a great 8th grade year. But it wasn't until about 2 months before graduation hit, and I realized, although I'm doing these things with my new friends, I miss my old friends, and like
Yeah.
they're doing these things and I'm seeing pictures of them and like how much I miss them. And so it was kind of at that point that I realized, oh, I can't control what's going on outside of me. I can control what I'm doing here in my home. My mom,
Yeah.
I mean, I love my parents, but I grew up in a house that was always on a diet. So my parents were
Yeah.
always on some kind of Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, whatever it was. So it wasn't like I had this strong nutrition role model in front of me. It was,
Yeah.
my mom's not going to watch if I don't eat lunch today at school. All right, I'm not going to eat
Yeah.
lunch. One of those things that just became
Mhm.
kind of perpetuated by this feeling of control because I was so out of control at the time. So
Yeah.
that was really what led to it. And I don't know if you remember, like, when you counsel with eating disorders, they usually have that one moment that triggers them, right? Like the
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
that's like, I'm gonna stop eating. And I remember it
Yeah.
to this day, like it was that whole situation, but there was a gentleman who sat in front of me in homeroom, and he turned around and he said, just out of the blue, Liz, you have a pig nose and you're really fat. And I was like, what? Like,
Whoa.
verbatim. And I remember his name, but I'm not gonna say it just in case he's a listener because,
Hey,
it's
call
a
him
big deal.
out right now. You know who you
But
are, dude. You suck.
so long and the short, that was kind of like the moment that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't feel so great in my skin. Maybe I am fat.
Mhm.
Like maybe I should restrict, coupled with these
Yeah.
other emotions. And so, I worry now as a mom of a daughter and a son, because we know eating disorders don't discriminate based on gender. But
Mhm.
I also am so glad I went through that because, one, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have become a dietitian probably had I not
Yeah.
had that experience. But I look at this lens of where we are now in 2022 almost, and how much social media is affecting young kids' body image, and how
Yeah.
much we have, as much as we have some awesome people out there like bashing diet culture, how
Yeah.
much it still is prevalent, and how
Yeah.
much work we have to do, as parents, as dietitians, really to break
Mhm.
this stigma out there.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I have a young little amazing 5-year-old girl, and my I met my wife doing eating disorder treatment. So she's an eating disorder therapist, and I think one of the prevalent things that we find, helping people develop and really in a lot of ways reparent themselves is helping them to notice that it is oftentimes that there's going to be moments of chaos in life, and where your power lies is your ability to sit in some of the chaos and sit in some of those really uncomfortable feelings and get some of your needs met. So Liz, I love the fact that you had talked about at the time there was a lot of uncontrollable things, and the one thing that you could control was your body and what you did, right? So if we can kind of go back there, I mean, what was the moment for you where you knew that this was not helping you, wasn't serving you in the long run? And what did you do to get that help?
Yes, no, absolutely. And honestly, at 13 years old, I can't say it was definitely not my desire to get help. I fought it, just like any
Yeah.
13-year
Yeah.
old girl who's struggling with an eating disorder typically does. I fought that I didn't have a problem. It wasn't until actually a couple of friends of mine called my mom and were like, Liz doesn't sit with us anymore at lunch. She's sitting by herself. Because, it's someone who struggles with an eating disorder. You have no energy to socialize. You kind of just get
Yeah.
depressed, and,
Mhm.
like everything that
Isolate. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so it was like those red flags that they called out and let my mom know. And then a doctor's visit that saw that a significant weight loss over a 2-month period and was like, hey.
Yeah.
And I remember it was actually the morning I graduated of 8th grade that I was diagnosed with anorexia. And
Yeah.
they basically gave me 2 weeks to get into treatment, like an outpatient treatment program, and get set up before I was going to be placed in patient program because
Yeah.
it was that significant of a weight reduction that they were worried
Mhm.
about, tachycardia, all of these other things
Yeah.
that were happening in my body. And so, I fought the treatment team until I couldn't fight them anymore because they were going to take away something that was very important to me was basketball. I played basketball for 13 years and it was so
Nice.
close to being taken away from me that I said, okay, this isn't worth fighting anymore. I have to
Yeah.
play basketball.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of my big moment that made me start eating again. I
Mhm.
remember like one of the first fear foods I eat was a slice of Pizza Hut pizza and
Yeah.
watermelon.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. Like you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
And there's certain food triggers that I can still remember doing at 13 years old with my therapist there, just
Mhm.
to work through them. And I think I'm if I look back and, hindsight is 2020, but like that moment of control there of like, relinquishing control and knowing that food is so much more than this like putting on a pedestal. It's just food. It's just fuel.
Yeah.
Flash forward to the struggles we went through with infertility is that that's completely out of your control. You're mad at your body for doing something
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
think it should be able to do. And so going through it, there were so many times I wanted to change my body, especially I was one of the some people when they go through fertility treatments have a great response to medication. They don't change at all. Despite
Yeah.
like working out and everything else, their body doesn't even though, bolstered with hormones, maintains the same shape figure. My body
Mhm.
was not like that. My body
Yeah.
went through extremes with IVF, and so seeing the changes that I was going through and knowing that we weren't guaranteed an end result because truthfully, we didn't get pregnant from IVF. We ended up getting pregnant during breaks from IVF treatment. And
Yeah.
so seeing my body change during that time was like another like reminder of that like 13-year-old self that was like, hey, there are so many things you can't control in life
Yeah.
that if I keep trying to control my body and get mad at it for what it can't do, I'm never going to really enjoy the things that it can do. Like
Yeah.
I have a successful business. I have been able to create this career that, you know, 20-year-old Liz envies, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's such a powerful thing to look at from like an adult lens now and why I kind of traveled that journey to get where I am because
Mhm.
I know I'm sure as you know and your wife knows, like the women that you counsel that these little girls have so much ahead of them that they don't even know, but all they can think about during that period of time is the food, is this
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things that I have found just counseling these wonderful types of people in their journey is helping them to understand that, damn it, it's not about the food, but it's about the food. And it's not about my body, but it's about my body. And it's that like constant conundrum of trying to understand that. And I wonder, Liz, if we kind of go through these phases in your life, I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit of you becoming a mom, right? You being able to have children. So looking back at that time, can you kind of take us and our listeners through that process for yourself, describing a bit more what it was like and maybe also tapping into things that maybe you were telling yourself during that time?
Yes, absolutely. And so, becoming a mom was always something. And truthfully, I can remember a conversation I had with my mom yelling at me at
Yeah.
13 years old in my physician's office. Like they were putting me on the pill to try and like mask, part of the anorexia and like just regain a cycle, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, bone mass, make sure I didn't go full, osteopenic at 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I remember my mom yelling at me and just crying because, as a parent now, I can understand like how frustrated, out of control she felt and just saying, "Do you never wanna have
Yeah.
kids, Elizabeth? Like, do you never wanna have kids?" And so that conversation at the doctor's office at 13 has always stuck in my mind, like, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
yes, I do wanna have kids. So, like, I wanna play basketball right now, but, like, long term, one day I do wanna get married. I do wanna have kids. So, like,
Yeah.
let's figure out how I can help that situation now." Now, flash forward to my husband and I got married. We've been married 9 plus years now, and so right away, like
Nice.
we'd been dating before we got married. We knew kids were on the agenda. My husband, I always called him I what's the term? And now I'm losing it. He's not my sugar daddy. It's what is it called? Oh my gosh,
I mean,
when
I
you
guess that works.
no, because I am a strong, independent female. But what is the term when you marry someone who's a little bit older than you?
Oh, like, I guess robbing the cradle, but yeah, he's your zaddy.
Yeah, my zaddy, whatever. He's only 6 years older than me, but
Yeah,
long and the short, like we knew that, we wanted to have kids. Like it wasn't
yeah,
something that we were gonna. So we get married, we start trying to have kids, and we can't. We're like, this is weird. Like, so we keep trying, and then lo and behold, like it doesn't. It takes us 5 years to have our first kid. So
yeah.
our daughter was actually born on our 6-year wedding anniversary. So we share a wedding anniversary with our daughter.
Oh, that's great.
So it's kind of fun, but that journey taught me so much about myself and my
Yeah,
marriage, truthfully.
yes.
Um, it was also at a time when I was starting fresh in my own business. Like, sure, I had dabbled in entrepreneurship for 6 years,
Yeah,
but it wasn't until the first time that like I was relying on me to bring in my own paycheck.
yeah.
So what am I going to do? I had the stress of that and the stress of trying to conceive, trying to bring a life into this world with IVF,
Mhm.
with medications, appointments, everything else. But truthfully, I think having the outlet of starting my own business during that time was a great it was a great energy outlet for me. I think that helped establish so well, like, if I can't excel at this thing, I can excel at this thing because this is all on me. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah,
all on how much hustle I'm going to put in. And so I don't regret it during that time because I think it's helped this new period where I am with two littles at home,
absolutely.
where I can,
Yeah,
kind of say no to things because I've built this business for myself. But I will also say that motherhood in itself has taught me so much. As I'm sure when you became a dad, that
yeah.
it makes you like I don't want to say I'm not type A anymore because I still have outlines for all my work things. I still
Sure.
have, like, but it's also let me like, okay, if I don't like post today about that cool snack bar that
It's
I want you to
okay.
try, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay. Like
Yeah,
if for some reason I don't get my blog up today and it takes me 2 extra days, that's gonna be okay. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think so that's something I'm learning is that everything, yes, I still want to give my best work, but like sometimes your best work is just pressing publish and seeing it and knowing that it's going to evolve over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of I hear a lot of self-compassion in a lot of what you're describing, and I think that's such a lost art for a lot of people. And for our listeners out there, as you're listening in, or if you're seeing this on YouTube or wherever you're hearing this message, I think it's imperative that we understand that self-compassion is just another level of self-love. And I what I hear from you, Liz, is a great deal of compassion stepping through those stages. And I'm a big purpose and why person, right? I'm someone that really believes in that. As I hear a lot of these heroes journey stories, one of the things that keeps blaring out to me and a lot of our listeners is people getting really centered on why they're even doing what they're doing. So you described a little bit of like building this business, stepping into parenthood at the same time, and having to go through that. So when you were going through some of these treatments and not really knowing what was going to happen, and I don't want to speak for you, but possibly looking at situations like that as a little bit of chaos, uh what kept you going? Who kept you going?
Yes, that's a great question. And honestly, I will say like hands down, my husband is my best friend. I call him CEO. So someone asked the other day, "Do you guys have
I
like
You said
you?"
that, Mr.
Yes,
CEO, and I was like, I kind of like that nickname. I'm gonna tell my wife
yeah,
that actually.
yeah. And someone actually thought like that he was a part of my business. And I said, "Oh, no, no, no. He's my certified eating officer." But he's not a part of Shaw Simple Swaps. He's a part of my branding, but not a part of my business. He's not on payroll.
I love
Um,
it.
so, but he was a very very important part of me, one, encouraging me to take the risk to start my own business, and two, just like being there for me through these rocky roads. And
Yeah,
now, sharing this rocky road of parenthood because we know it's like not all rainbows and butterflies all the time,
yeah,
but I will say he was great, but also like your network. And so I know that you know about
yes,
network. Like your
yeah,
network is not only your net worth, but they're who you rely on in these hard times. And
yeah,
as much as I truthfully, like, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to kick myself in the foot for it, but I don't love social media. If I could redo my business 5 years ago, I
yeah,
would definitely plan a different way of maybe because I don't regret social media as far as like sharing my story, because I know that's where I've connected. I connected with you. I've connected
Yeah.
with so many amazing people that I would not be the person, I would not have the fulfillment in life had I not met them. But there's the flip side of social media that you mentioned, imposter syndrome, before when we were talking offline.
Yes.
There's the comparison trap. Oh gosh,
Mhm.
they're doing so much better than I. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I published that. What are they thinking about me?
Yeah.
I have that. I don't know a human being who doesn't have that.
I have that too.
And it's one of those things that I think that the true people I've met, I'm gonna shout out to one woman right now who's on my mind, because you mentioned something about self-love, self-compassion, and this like taking a step back. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know Jenna Braddock from Make Healthy Easy, but she
Mhm.
is very big in enneagrams. But she's
Yeah.
also very like just a solid person to talk to if you
Mhm.
need just talking about life. And she teaches at the Human Performance Institute, so people pay like 5 grand to go have her help
Yeah.
you structure your life
That's
goals.
awesome. Yeah.
um and I have the pleasure of her being a close friend, so I got to do this over Voxer this week. But she
Yeah.
said something to me that was really important, and I think that this is a theme that I didn't realize was actually very empowering for me during my journey and on this new journey, is recovery. So often we
Mhm.
hear people talk about self-care, that you need to get your nails done for self-care, that you need to get a
Mm.
massage. Like, self-care for me truthfully is usually a run. Sometimes it's with two screaming kids in the stroller, but that's still a form of self-care for me.
You're a
And
legend for that, by the way. I couldn't do it.
it's just what looks right for me. And everyone, I'm
Mhm.
not dissing you at all if massages and things, I would love that. It's just
Yeah.
not feasible in this wheelhouse right now that I'm in.
Yeah.
But she mentioned to me is that as a society, we think about self-care in these more tangible forms, but we don't ever look at it as recovery. And so when she
Mhm.
said recovery to me, that like self-care is actually a form of recovery, like, what does recovery look like for you? And I was like, wow, like that's actually really empowering. Like, regardless of what you're going through in life, I think every single human being who's survived COVID and this pandemic, like, we are in a stage of recovery
Yes.
because it's been so much emotionally, physically, everything else, that we need to take that time for recovery and what that looks like. That doesn't mean like dismissing from the world, but it
Yeah.
means like, hey, what are you doing to actually connect with like your purpose in life?
Mhm.
Like, and I
Yeah.
think that that's something that I'm curious to know, when you became a dad, if you had these feelings come up, like, what is my bigger purpose now? Because
Mhm.
I feel like I'm have a renowned sense of
Yeah.
evaluating that now with two littles in the world. Like, is my life purpose to be a nutrition communicator on the media, doing the things I do right now? It very well may be, but I'm not
Yeah.
100% on that anymore. And it's so funny
Yeah.
because I feel like that this is the big part of entrepreneurship, is that you will continue to evolve and ask yourself that purposeful question over
Yeah.
time.
There's I love that because I very much view the same things as a constant state of evolution.
Mhm.
And it's really fantastic to hear some of these heroes' journeys where like I'll kind of prompt you with the question that I give everyone, but it's essentially like, do you feel like you've made it? And if so, if not, what does that look like? And what I'm finding is it's a constant state of that evolution. And I'm kind of thinking back when I became a parent. Like our family's a huge Snapchat family, so that's
Okay.
where we like, right, have a lot of our
Yep.
photos and videos. And Snapchat will hit you up like, hey, this is what you were doing 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I look at my young self then, and it's like 5 years in the grand scheme is not a whole lot of time. But I look at that person and I constantly just want to be like, dude, it's okay. Like it's gonna be okay. I promise you, you feel you right now, you feel like you're not doing enough. And I get that. Be present with your family, like it's a new family, like it's okay. And I think one of the things, Liz, and I want to ask you about just your self-care habits and what has gotten you to where you are today. One of the things that I picked up this last year, and you and I connect on this, is basketball. I played basketball my whole life, right? So one of the self-care things that I started doing over the last 9 months almost daily is just playing basketball. And for me, like it's much less of moving my body and much more of a mind game, because I knew that like at the young age of 7, that's where my negative self-talk came from, was from the basketball court. So for me, that constant state is just kind of my mindfulness journey. And I wonder for you, Liz, what habits or what things have gotten you to where you are today, to where you are seeing that evolution and you are working towards more fulfillment and working towards this like amazing person? What habits or things have you invested in that have gotten you there?
Yes, I love the way you phrased it too. I will say, and it's movement, but it's mindful movement.
Yeah.
And obviously that's evolved so much in the last 24 months with COVID and bringing
Yeah.
another little baby into this world. But fitness has always been something for me. I am a personal trainer. I've never used my personal training license to train others. It was kind of more selfishly for me,
Yeah.
to understand body mechanics and things like that.
Yeah.
But we have a home gym, and we're grateful to have that because it's my outlet. So whether I am
Yeah.
pushing kids and getting a quick run in, I've invested in making sure my husband and I are both on the same page with that. That sometimes when we're both about to lose our shit, like we know that we're both going to be better people after
Yeah.
20 minutes in our gym, even
It's
just
so
20 minutes.
true. So
And
true.
so we allow ourselves that time. Sometimes that might mean our toddler is on her iPad because she's playing a puzzle or whatever it is that we have
I need
justified to
time.
ourselves as okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
that 20 minutes to ourselves, And that has been a key player in my mental health through COVID, through entrepreneurship, through everything because it is a drastic, and I can even tell. Not only can the people around me tell, when I
Yeah.
don't get the time for me. And that's just, again, it's not always me because sometimes we're listening to Doc McStuffins on a run or whatever it is, but it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's making sure that moving that body because we know that endorphins flow when you get your blood flowing, and so
Mhm.
I think that that's something that I have continued to invest in myself. On the flip side is connection. So that is something I very much so missed during COVID. And so you might think like, well, you own your own business, you've worked for home for 7+ years now. Like, did you really have that much connection? Well, as we know via social media, you do have
Yeah.
quite a bit of actual really meaningful connections.
Yeah.
But also I used to travel a lot for work. I would probably be gone twice a month on different press trips or things like that. And so since COVID happened, I haven't had those connections. And so
Mhm.
it's been very something that I know is a missing link from my self-care strategy, from my investing in myself strategy, but I haven't quite figured out with now 2 kids in this mom world how to make those
Yeah.
connections, here safely with COVID. So
Mhm.
that's something that I don't have advice for people, but I just know that like it's something I continue to chip away at and figure out, like putting my daughter in dance or ballet or whatever it is, soccer, trying to get her out exploring new kids, but also like me, meeting moms on the sideline, meeting dads, meeting parents, meeting, fellow, I don't want to say kid people watching kids soccer because you should
Yeah.
be a parent watching kids soccer most likely, but you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I lie right now.
I think it's funny you mentioned the iPad thing and I always joke about this too. My daughter over the past year and a half or more or less, because she just finished her first week of kindergarten this past week, since the start of the pandemic. She went on spring break and just never went back, obviously for obvious reasons. Um, So one of the things that we constantly joke about is like our daughter has watched every single Magic School Bus, and there's no shame in it because sometimes you just got to take care of yourself. And if 25 minutes is going to give you that release, then go take it. Because my wife and I are very much home gym people as well, and we were just talking about this last night. Like I'm never going back to a gym. Why would I do that? I have everything that I need here. But you mentioned the healthy connection piece, and I really resonate with that. I'm someone who's very extroverted and I really enjoy that connection over the past year and a half. Obviously, that hasn't happened. And so for you, Liz, I wonder that piece of you obviously has had to evolve, has had to change. So how do you get your connection now?
Yes, that's a great question, and I will say, like, it's little things. So, like, for instance, as much as I despise, I was sharing offline how I had to go switch bank accounts the last 2 days,
Yeah.
so I've spent quite a bit of time at the bank, but it's
Yeah.
funny, but the gentleman that I switched to, the banker, him and I ended up like, he was having trouble feeding his 8-year-old. I spent an extra 20 minutes there talking about how to feed his 8-year-old. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
those little things that I think we all have missed. So anytime, like, I'm at the grocery store, everyone at the grocery store knows my kiddos, because not only does my toddler have to ask for stickers, but then we have to talk about politeness. We don't just say 3 stickers, please. We say, may I please have 3 stickers? Like,
Yes.
just trying to, I think all of those little things that I took for granted before, as like, oh, I have to get out of the store because I have to get home and I have to do this. It's like, hey, let's go to the store. Let's go talk to Martha at the checkout line. Like,
Yeah.
I think that those little pieces of connection, I really believe it as part of my tagline. Small changes make big differences. Small
Yes.
impacts make big differences. So even, at this point in my career where I'm kind of reevaluating where I am, what am I being purposeful? Am I making an impact by posting, a new recipe using a sponsored client online? Like, am I
Yeah.
making the impact I wanted to do? And I take a step back, and this is again a conversation I refer back to Jenna, and she's like, Liz, we have become such a culture that thinks we have to make these giant mega impacts in order to have to have serve a purpose in this world. But if I helped two parents this week by posting a quick meatloaf recipe that showed them, hey, you can have a delicious, nutritious meal in under 30 minutes, and it made their lives easier, then that's
Yeah.
a purposeful thing that I've done.
Yeah.
It's not always this bottom line driven. I enjoy creating recipes. I love the clients I work with. I have a very strict protocol that I evaluate before I take on clients now. And if they really align with my nutrition philosophy and my brand, then yes, I'm going to continue working with them. But knowing that it doesn't have to be like 20,000 likes and 50,000 shares. And it's just like, hey, you made an impact in a couple moms' lives this week, or dads, or, my kid finally tried this recipe. Like, that's an impact that we should be proud of?
Yeah. Yeah. It really is too, because I think if you can revamp your mindset around what healthy connection looks like, and you can get little bits and pieces of that, it definitely supplements. And I can really resonate with what you're talking about there. So I want to ask you one more question before we go to our rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm so thankful for you as a person for taking some time for the pod. I want to go back into your journey of your recovery, right? I love the
Mhm.
fact that you mentioned recovery too, because I think about it in the same way. But your recovery from your eating disorder, and then kind of going back to like this journey of really wanting to be a parent, and then now parenthood, where you are today, Liz. Are there any messages that you would have given yourself during those times that you feel like would have been influential?
I think they're messages I subconsciously gave myself, but I didn't really understand until now that I've been on the other side of this. Is
Yeah,
that number one, I think people need to know that there's so many things thrown at you in life, regardless if it's infertility, anorexia, an eating disorder, insert whatever challenge, a boss that makes you feel terrible,
yeah,
whatever challenge you're going through, it's not your fault. There are so many multiple factors that contribute to disease states, that contribute
yeah.
to psychological conditions, that can contribute to unhealthy working relationships, that
Hmm.
there's not one isolated incident, one isolated medical condition that
Yeah,
is your fault. And so if I had known that all along on this journey, that would have been something that I probably, you know, could have had a little bit better relationship with my body, during the
yeah.
time. And like, I think that that's important for people to hear. And then also, like, sometimes you have to let go of control. You can't control everything.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
can't,
just
and I know it
part of life.
hurts. Yeah,
It's just part of life. And
yeah,
this is also me telling me that right now. You can't control everything. Like,
yeah,
it's just part of life. And there's a season for everything. I'm not going to tell you like to be happy and that everything happens for a reason, because that's probably the one thing I hate when people say the most, like everything happens for a reason. Well,
yeah,
yes, it might be true, but
yeah,
let's be real about it, and let's just be a little bit more compassionate, and like
yeah,
whatever season you're in, just know that you will get through that season, because as we know, summer always changes into fall, fall turns into winter, winter to spring.
yeah,
There's going to be another side of it.
yeah. I don't think that I've ever been a fan of that saying everything happens for a reason. I personally think it's bullshit, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Um, okay,
Appreciate the
so
honesty.
yeah, right. Okay, so Liz, let's kind of dive into like our these are the only questions that I have each pod because I just like to have more organic combos.
Yeah.
because I'm very, very type B and I don't like that much structure. So this is
Okay.
awesome. So here's my type A version of the pod. All right. So obviously it's the Can't Believe I Made It podcast, like really tapping into people's heroes journeys. So for you, kind of the program question that I would love for you to answer is, um, do you feel like you've made it? And if not, what does making it feel like for you in your life with where you're at right now?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I feel like it's rapid fire too. Like I have to rapid
Yeah.
fire back at you.
Yeah.
But you know what? Do I feel like I've made it? No. Do I know what that looks like as far as making it? No. Do I feel very fulfilled in life? Yes. Have I
Okay.
marked all the boxes that I always thought I wanted to hit professionally? Yes. But
Yeah.
is it satisfying now? Not necessarily. I think that I love what I do, but is this other part of my life that I didn't know was gonna be so fulfilling? Yes. But do I feel
Yeah.
like there's still a missing link? Yes. And what does that mean? I don't know. I will tell you this, that I think something that I have wanted to do for 5 plus years has been to go back to school and get my PhD, and I think that's something that you'll see me doing by the time I turn 40, is that I
I
will
love it.
have gone back to school. So when I say yes and no. It's not that I don't love my job. It's not that I don't love
Yeah.
my family or anything like that. It's just that I think that there is this new epiphany, new experiences with motherhood and the challenges that got us to where we are have made me see that there's more for me to learn, and then I want to go learn that and apply that to a bigger picture of my life later on.
Yeah. Oh, I really love that too because I think about myself 5 years ago, and this is what provides me a lot of self compassion. I love, Liz, that you talked about like the professional boxes. 5 years, I didn't know what my life would look like. And if I think back then and I tell myself like, hey, these are all the things that you've done up to this point, like I know that 5 years ago, me, 30-year-old me would be like, holy shit, that's dope. Like,
Yeah,
congratulations.
yeah.
And that's what like really keeps me going. So I love the fact that you're like, hey, I've checked these boxes. I feel really fulfilled. And I also know that there are some other things that I want to achieve. So uh Dr. Shaw sounds great. All right. So I'll make sure that I change it in the show notes. All right. It's about to
Let's
happen.
ping me in 5 years, okay? Let's do
Ping
this
you in
again in
5
5 years.
years.
Yeah.
We'll do this in 5 years. All right. When this pod goes crazy, crazy
It's
wild.
viral.
Um, yes, viral. All right. So second question for you. So obviously it's the hero's journey. I mean, we're really tapping into high performing people and overseeing like what has gotten them to where they are today. So you can answer this in one of two ways, Liz. So kind of put yourself in the mindset of heroes. So you can go Marvel action, uh, characters that you really love from movies. So you can go that, or you can go like who your hero is now. So who is your hero comparison and why?
Okay. Oh gosh. That's a very tough question. Oh, I think so. I'm terrible with action movies too. My husband in my like ear right now is saying Batman, Batman, Batman,
Yeah,
you
say
know?
Batman.
Say Batman, Liz. Say Batman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Batman? But no, truthfully, I mean, oh, gosh, a strong, independent. Okay, so Timothy Joy is an artist in Denver. She
Okay.
has some very empowering um, books, drawings, everything about,
Okay.
we're stronger together as a nation. Like we're stronger together
Hmm.
as united people,
Hmm.
and not even getting political, just like just just strong coming from like the female in general, or
Yeah.
like embracing um people who identify in different ways,
Yeah.
and just I think that my hero is the people I see depicted in her pictures. So we have, God, I want to go run and grab the book from my daughter's room right now. It's even I bought so many of her paintings for my son's room, and it's just so many collection of wise things that people have said. And I think
Yeah.
that if you buy the book, not a plug for her at all, but she's
We'll make sure we put
so
in the show
great,
notes.
so great.
Yeah.
She like just check out her Instagram handle because she shares so much there too. I think all of the saying. So I think my hero is in the people that have come before us. If I could be philosophical like that, the
Yeah.
really strong, powerful, I'm gonna say feminine leads. Like we got to give it out to Ruth. She
Hmm.
had a lot come before us, and when she passed away during COVID, and
R.I.P.
it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I I didn't realize how much she had done for women in
Yeah.
America until you read these stories. Like, so I will say, like, people who have come before us, because I think they are my heroes, because they remind me that my mission isn't done in this world.
Yeah.
Like, my most important job is to raise two kind humans that will carry forth all of these, like, great
Yeah.
messages on our Instagram handle. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
feel like that's what my heroes are.
Yeah. Liz, I love that too, because I think one of the things, especially over this past year, that I've learned about myself is recognizing my own privilege as a male in this world, and recognizing my role as also a male of color. And what that means is raising this like very, very leadership driven little 5-year-old girl. And I'm kind of in the mindset right now. I think that we probably would be further along, and we would be a lot more compassionate to each other if we had more female leaders in this world. So go women, go women.
I love it. I love it. Your daughter's gonna be the next one on the voting tab that I
Yeah.
vote for. There we go.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I love that. So we'll make sure for our listeners out there that we put this in the show notes, because now I'm very interested
To
in
go
what
check
you're
her out.
talking about. I'm
I
all
know you're
about
gonna get stuff for
unity.
her daughter. Yes,
Yeah.
she's gonna be perfect in her room. Yes.
Yeah. I'm so pumped about that. Okay, Liz, last question. I'll let you go be the amazing mom and wife that you are, and some of your self-care. Hopefully you get some shots up. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yes, I am at Shaw Simple Swap. So I keep it simple across all platforms.
Okay.
Shaw, my last name, SHAW, simple as in simple, and then swaps, SWAPS. And
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, my website is the same.com. So
Mhm.
come say hello. Come, let's chat.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So for all of our listeners and people who are going to view this on YouTube or IGTV, we'll make sure we throw all of that stuff in the show notes. Liz, I want you to stay behind as I end our pod here, because I want to chat a little bit more with you. But before we end, Liz, thank you so much for your courage, your vulnerability, and really in so many ways your authenticity behind just telling your story. So I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Okay. So, for our listeners out there, as always, if something spoke to you right now, we're telling these heroes' journeys for so many reasons, but it's mainly because success leaves clues. And if something really resonated with you, take the time, take a screenshot of it. You can tag us at I Made It Pod on IG, or even just myself personally at Dezi Abeda. Let us know what resonated with you, because the information is readily available on how to be more authentic to who you are, how to be successful, but it's the application that we all need to invest in. So thank you so much for another amazing podcast. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you later.